What's good, Internet? You are listening to the SyrupCast, otherwise known as the MobileSyrup podcast. I'm your host, as always, Igor Bonifasic. It is episode 106. Today is February 3rd. Welcome to the month of February. As always, I'm joined by my good friends and colleagues, Patrick O'Rourke.
What's up? How are you?
Not too much. Rose Bihar.
Hey, it's your girl coming to you live from Toronto.
Nice. Good morning, Vietnam. Last but certainly not least, Jessica.
Hi, Igor. How you doing?
I'm all right. So, if you've been following the news, we're either watching the storyline of Star Wars or the real world, because an emperor-like figure has taken over the leading free democracy in the world, and Beyonce is having twins. The Queen is having twins. So make what you will. But
I hope it's Star Wars.
I hope it's Star Wars. But we're here not to talk about politics, even though they're quite distraughtful right now. I don't know if that's not even the right word, but we're here to talk about mobile news. But before we can get to mobile news, we need to listen to some sick royalty-free beats. So punch it, Robin. Welcome back. So, as you, I'm sure, all know, the Super Bowl's this weekend. And for the first time ever, you're going to be able to see those big budget American ads. Patrick's going to be super excited because he's going to see that Switch ad.
I like ads. Ads are fun.
Nintendo's first Switch ad, or first Super Bowl ad in general.
It was actually, I watched it yesterday because it's on YouTube.
That defeats the purpose of having it in the Super Bowl. God damn it.
People that watch the Super Bowl don't use YouTube, I think, is what Nintendo's banking on. I don't think that's accurate, but that's what they're hoping, I think.
50-50, I'd say. Right. So, and this comes as a result of a CRTC decision in which Bell, the exclusive rights holder for the Super Bowl in Canada, is no longer allowed to do a practice called simultaneous substitution, wherein they'll broadcast an American property, and this applies to both Canadian channels as well as American channels. So, for instance, I believe, is it MSNBC or NBC that broadcasts the Super Bowl in the U.S.?
I think it's NBC.
I don't watch football, so
I think it's NBC.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in Canada, you can watch whatever the NBC affiliate is. So I think we get Buffalo or something.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Let's say, or that's in Toronto anyway. We get the NBC affiliate, and you'll be watching, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, what a great touchdown!" But now let's go to the ads. And then it'll do this like weird thing where an American ad will start playing, and then it'll quickly switch to a Canadian ad, and that is simultaneous substitution.
Yeah. Or, I mean, a lot of the times they don't mess up, and it's still just.
But the best is when they mess up,
yeah.
and then you come right back in. Oh my God, folks, they just tied the game. We're going into overtime, right? And I mean, I'm exaggerating, but this, I do recall this happening in certain moments where it is the cut is not as clean as one would hope, right? Yeah. And this is actually part of a much broader practice that happens in Canada. It's been happening for 40 years, I learned today. If you go to the Globe and Mail, there's this, I don't know if I would classify it as a great opinion piece, but the vice president of the NFL is pointing out why the NFL is none too pleased with this.
Kind of a lobbying piece more than anything.
A lobbying piece, and it's the Globe and Mail's MO. If they want to publish this stuff, go ahead.
Yeah.
So as I said, this is a long-going practice, and the CRTC, for whatever reason, Jean-Pierre, the dad, was like, has to stop with the Super Bowl. This is, you got to draw the line somewhere, and the Super Bowl is where we draw the line, ironically.
Yeah, I think it's one of those rare situations where he actually pushed something through for what he believed was the good of the Canadian public.
Right. So I think that's a great place to start this discussion is, what do we think of this decision? Like, what side are you on?
As like a consumer, if I cared about the Super Bowl, I mean, in the past, I've woken up the next day and gone on YouTube to watch all the Super Bowl ads, because sometimes there's video game reveals or console reveals or product reveals, stuff like that. if I were to watch it this time, I wouldn't have to go on YouTube the next day. I would see those ads immediately.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people watching it, they don't care if it's, they don't want to see Canadian ads. They want to see the cool, big budget, expensive American ads that you're going to see on the internet and you're going to read about for like the next year or whatever.
And just as a preface to that, or a side note, I believe, I think it's still the case, the ad space that comes alongside the Super Bowl is the most expensive in the world.
Yeah. So you see like
Absolutely.
the biggest brands do the craziest stuff. Like there's going to be a Nintendo Switch ad that's already available on YouTube. We talked about this.
Yeah.
But like I'm sure Coke will do something. Like all these crazy brands will do crazy things. And the Canadian ads, I think some companies in the past have done special things for the Super Bowl ad space, but I don't think it compares to what giant US companies are doing.
Yeah, you can't compare.
So as like a random dude who may or may not watch the Super Bowl, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Jessica, what's your opinion on all this?
Well, as somebody watching the Super Bowl, who's, again, not going to be me, I can imagine why seeing the hyped up American big budget ads is of interest to them, especially because they become fairly iconic and they're referenced for months and they're used as a ballpark for the following year's ads. So I can understand from that perspective why a consumer would be interested in watching them. But, and as I always do provide the corporate perspective, I've realized, I don't know if this was done in the best way possible. I think that if the exclusive rights to the Super Bowl for CTV and TSN were purchased by Bell with the understanding that they would be able to substitute ads, it's not really fair to pull the rug out from under them, no matter how much the company is making. Personally, I think that that's a separate issue. Perhaps Bell is doing well.
That's a very interesting point, but this has actually been in the works for, I believe, around 2 years. It's not new. The CRTC gave Bell a long time to chew on this, and Bell has been kicking up a fight about it. It thought that it might have time to appeal the decision, which the court granted it the right to appeal in November, but it just hasn't had that time. And as a result, the Globe and Mail has said that it already sort of went through the process of selling a lot of its advertising for the big day.
Yeah.
And now may have to renege on those agreements and sort of have an uncomfortable moment with their advertisers. And further than that, Bell, being pretty unhappy, partially blamed its recent layoffs, which weren't that many. It was like 20 people.
It was like 20 industry jobs across the country.
And
But
also
on the Super Bowl issue, saying that it lost money because over the course of a year, it makes about $250 million in SIM sub revenue. And so with millions of that alone is coming from the Super Bowl. So they are losing millions on this. But when we look at their recent fourth quarter quarterly report, we can see they're doing just fine.
So to put it in perspective, Bell now has 8.5 million subscribers in Canada and revenue of $1.88 billion.
Sure, but I think it's important, that's wireless, right? And this is broadcast, and they're separate divisions, right? So, and the other, I don't know how much of a factor this really is, but I've heard, there's the local angle where it's the ad space they're able to sell creates commercials in Canada by Canadian actors and stuff. But it's how many ads is a company the companies that can pay for this are the big banks, right? How many ads is CIBC commissioning specifically for the Super Bowl? From my understanding, it was they were mostly just replaying ads that you see every day on television in Canada, right?
That's what you would see for the most part in previous Super Bowls on Canadian networks.
Right.
Yeah,
so for this one, they were trying to do something different. Where
no, I agree with you. I think it would have been much the same.
Yeah, I guess there's really no way to know for sure what we would have seen, but there are a lot of different arguments for playing Canadian ads during the Super Bowl, and one of them is definitely that supporting Canadian content, supporting Canadian actors, but that doesn't really hold up because there are just not enough ads on one day to support an entire population of Canadian actors. And I mean, I guess it's more about a principle thing, right? It's we're already paying for the Super Bowl. We're already hosting it exclusively on one of our networks. Do we also host ads for American-based companies rather than Canadian companies? It's not so much about, well, this is how many people are going to buy this product based on this ad. It's more about what kind of message do we want to send. And I'm just speculating here. I'm not siding one way or the other, but I think that's probably what the Canadian creative community is looking at here.
Right. So on that front, like, what is the long-term outcome of this? Do we see kind of a domino effect where, anytime you turn to NBC as a Canadian, it's just straight up American ads, right? Is that when the kind of Canadian creative industry starts the floor under it falls out?
Yeah.
Isn't that how it already works though in NBC right now? Because it's an American station.
But they're substituting it already, because they've been substituting for 40 years across the board.
I don't think there would be much of a reason for that to occur, because there is such a financial motivation for Canadian networks to be able to sell their own advertising space. And the only reason that this Super Bowl exemption occurred was because the CRTC received complaints from Canadians who wanted to see the American ads. Of course, there's arguments as to how many complaints that really was. But I mean, that is a frequent complaint that you would see even on social media. Is that Canadians miss out on that stuff.
I think I'd buy that that's pretty frequent. I mean, I remember the last Super Bowl, like, you just look on Twitter and stuff. That's one of the things that people are complaining about, that they want to see the American ads. Because I don't think, the average person watching the Super Bowl cares about whether it's promoting Canadian content. That's not even something that...
That's not even something that would enter
it doesn't enter their mind. They don't care. They just want to see the cool ads.
They want the spectacle that is the Super Bowl,
And
right?
I see it from both perspectives. I totally get that, but I also understand the importance of giving Canadian companies the opportunity to promote something on such a wide, enormous platform. But also, I don't really care. I just want to see cool ads. You know what I mean? So I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why Canadians not even that they don't buy Canadian, but it's Canadians don't even know how to buy Canadian unless it's really the only option available to them. It's because American media has seeped into every aspect of our being, from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to bed at night. So I don't know how bad I feel for people that want to see the American spectacle ads.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think it's fair to say that with simultaneously substituted ads, those ads are still mainly from multinational corporations.
For sure,
that are not
like
property
HSBC, right?
It'll be really interesting to see how this progresses going forward, whether or not Bell will win the appeal to once again have simultaneous substitution. I think they've got a lot of clout behind them, so I could very easily see it happening.
I can see them winning that argument. I don't feel that if this is a practice that's been going on for the past 40 years, as the NFL editorial did state, then there seems to be a lot more support for it than against it, right?
More often than not, to maintain the status quo.
That's true. This would really throw things off balance, because like you were mentioning earlier, Igor, the NFL has a large stake in this as well.
Right.
So if companies, Canadian networks, don't have the incentive to purchase the rights to the Super Bowl, the exclusive rights, because they're not making the millions off of it or making anything off of it.
You're not going to get to see the ads anyway.
Then I think that the CRT has got them in a tight space in a certain way, because some Canadian network is going to have the Super Bowl. I don't think it would ever happen that no Canadian network would purchase it. But at the same time, I guess that really just affects the NFL.
Right. I mean, from the perspective of the NFL, it's really easy to understand the financial incentives here, mainly that the cost of the Super Bowl is it's more valuable when you can substitute the ads, right? I think, hypothetically, let's say Bell paid $5 million that's probably not even the price because it's
Yeah.
way more.
Yeah.
Now it becomes something like $500,000, you know, just because it's like, wow, this is not that valuable to us.
Yep.
So
I wonder if in other countries, like, is this how it works, or
Yeah, that's
is
what I
there
was just
similar sim sub things too? That'd be something worth looking into.
So is this just a long-winded plot to devalue one of the United States' most important athletic icons? Is that all this is?
undermine them.
Well,
Maybe the
Undermine what
CRTC
they
is
love
more
best.
forward-thinking than I thought.
well, I think, you know,
It's an
you,
evil
you
plot.
laugh, but like, I think the commissioner of the NFL has asked President Trump to talk to the CRTC.
Yes, and I mean Marco Rubio, remember?
Yeah,
we
Marco
wrote
Rubio
that
wrote a
story
letter.
together.
Yeah,
It's
he
like,
wrote a
can
letter.
we please stop this practice?
remember that.
Yeah, like,
Complaining about
Yeah.
this order, and
We're
Yeah.
coming after apple pie next, America.
America, watch out.
just taking them down one by one. First the Super Bowl.
You know what's as American as apple pie?
What?
What?
Useless products. And there's a useless product that's coming your way on February 9th. One, Google is going to announce it. Actually, it's 2 useless products. Although my colleagues will argue that they're not useless. Excuse me.
Right.
So on February 9th, Google reportedly, we still haven't heard a peep from the company, is going to finally like date and announce the availability of Android Wear 2.0.
2 point big O.
Ooh, yes. As well as announce 2 new smartwatches, both by LG, because the pickings are quite honestly slim right now. The LG Watch Sport, which is going to be the more expensive, more feature-rich product, as well as the LG Watch Style, which is, I think, the one that looks...
For ladies.
Well, not just for ladies, for reasonable people. That watch looks much more handsome.
I like the style more from the leaked photos. Like I'm looking at it right now. It's slightly smaller.
It has a flower on it, guys. We all know who this is being marketed towards.
That's why I want it, is because of the flower. Yeah, I mean, Wear 2.0 has been a long time coming. It's been delayed a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
People such as yourself question the utility of a smartwatch. I think that
I feel like you guys are going to tell me what. So, okay, what about Wear 2.0 is going to sell me?
nothing.
Okay.
If you're not sold on the idea of a smartwatch, nothing's going to
So-
change with Wear 2.0. The Wear 2.0 update is very much like the watchOS 3 update for the Apple Watch. So there's going to be apps that now run independently on the watch. They don't need to be connected to the phone, and there's going to be a store on the watch as well. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything
Mhm.
else that's big? in it?
I think so. There's going to be texting, and because
Oh,
like the
Handwriting
on-
support
yeah.
as
on-screen,
well.
on-screen keyboard,
Yeah.
which I don't
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
think is necessary, but sure.
yeah, it's going to bring a lot more functionality, and the watches themselves are also, I think, both promised to come in LTE connectivity
Just
versions.
one sport watch.
Oh, just the sport.
The
Okay.
sport
the giant one that is
Yeah.
great for clubbing your friends.
Clubbing your enemies and
Yeah.
friends alike. So basically, yeah, this is the big chance for Android Wear, and
Mm-hmm.
really almost like Android smartwatches in general, like including Samsung's Tizen, including all of those in the non-Apple Watch realm, to make a case for actually being useful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like we were talking about previously, me and Patrick, that might be the release of this Android Wear 2.0 and the 2 wearables might be the reason why a lot of other OEMs have stepped down from the plate when considering doing further wearables. So Motorola said no thank you. HTC
HTC.
said no thank you.
Yeah.
We're not gonna gonna
Samsung
compete.
said no thank you
First,
to
they
Android.
haven't
Wear, yeah.
they haven't been seeing the value in it. It just hasn't paid off for them.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, now Google is coming out with its own LG partnered watch. They could actually just sort of blow them out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
It looks really nice. It's probably
It
the
looks really
nicest
nice.
looking smartwatch that I've
Really?
ever
You
seen.
think so?
Yep.
The style or the sport?
I like the style.
Yep.
I really, really like it. I'm also a big fan of the Moto 360. I was pretty
Yep.
sad when Motorola said that they weren't going to continue. I think the second gen, like we just wrote about the Zen Watch 3,
Yes.
should go up somewhat soon, our review of it. I like what that watch looks like, but I feel that it's a little too big.
It is, and as you're also saying, it has these awkward straps, so
Yeah.
you can't lie it flat. They're non-standard. When I did try to take out one of the watch straps, a little pin fell out of the mechanism and got lost, and I had to request a new watch altogether. So
Wow.
the actual design of it is not quite what you'd want a watch to be.
Watch people will call them like lugs, I think, that come out from the side of it. That's the
Okay.
like official
Okay,
correct
lug.
word for them. I
Yeah,
had
big
to I
lug.
had to look this up myself to
Oh,
actually
okay.
learn.
Yeah.
I don't know
Mhm.
anything about watches. I'm far from a watch person. If I wasn't wearing this Apple Watch, I would have like a shitty Timex on or something like that.
But you would still wear a watch.
I would. So that's
And that's an interesting.
that's the thing where we
element.
sort of differ on smartwatches, and I think I differ from a lot of people. I think the way they're used now is useful if you use them in a certain way. I think you feel that LTE connectivity or 3G or whatever, allowing the watch to act independently, is sort of the missing link.
Yeah, I feel like many people feel that wearables like the watches lack the killer feature. You know, that one thing or maybe two things that really make a difference in your life.
So what
make
are
it worthwhile.
what are the current killer features of smartwatches?
If
aren't there?
there aren't any. I'm afraid, like, apart from if you're used to telling the time on your wrist, so that's what Pat does, and that's literally why he uses it. Notifications could be considered a killer feature, although a lot of people find those more distracting than
Yeah.
useful.
I think
Alarms. But
the big thing with smartwatches for me is people are waiting for this killer feature, this killer app, this thing to like change their lives. But I don't think that that's ever what the smartwatch was going to become. Maybe I thought that at one point, but now I see the smartwatch as a companion device that can simplify your life if you use it in a way that makes sense. But also, I've always worn a watch for like pretty much my
Right.
entire life.
Right.
So
And I think this kind of, it was a terrible segue. Let me be
No,
honest.
no.
But I think it kind of speaks to the issue with smartwatches is that their only market is for people who have like extraneous amounts of money, right? Like where it's not like a smartphone, right? Where smartphones have scaled to where they're a vital part of almost everyone's lives. Like we cannot imagine, I think at this, like going back to a feature phone,
Yep.
right? Or
Mhm.
let alone just not even having what is a very powerful computer in your pocket, right? Like
Yep.
you
Yeah.
can't get lost anymore with a smartphone, right?
So I can tell you what I think a killer smartwatch would be.
Okay.
Basically, it would be for the situations in which you can't have a smartphone with you or in which it's inconvenient. So, sporting or outdoor situations
Mm-hmm.
or anything where you simply don't want to have your hands on a phone.
Mm-hmm.
But for that to work, the watch does have to have its own connectivity and it has to have more processing power.
Yeah.
It probably also needs a great integration with a voice assistant like Google Assistant. So it'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see what LG does there.
supposed to be good with Wear
Right.
2.0. Supposed to be.
Right.
In theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
then
an
you-
independent phone on your wrist, essentially.
exactly. Yeah. Like limited. So, but you could still make calls, do text, use your maps, the essential things in a
Mhm.
pared down minimal version. And I know already, like when I'm saying those features, I'm just thinking of a watch that's gigantic.
Well, I mean,
So you want a
Yeah. I
phone
think-
that you like strap to your wrist.
but
It
I
is
mean,
exactly.
if you extrapolate like kind of technology, like processors and the components that make your smartphone as powerful as it is now are going to get miniaturized even further, right? And
Yep.
there might be also an interface like a holographic one, for instance, where you
Yeah.
could have an entire the kind of touchscreen you have with an iPhone 7 Plus displayed holographically, as I said.
Mhm.
So but like how far away is that? Like
Super
Yeah.
far.
are we going to even see Android Wear 3.0 at this rate?
I would rather just use my smartphone for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
I totally get what you're saying. I would just pull up my phone. I'd rather use that instead. The way that I use a smartwatch is for notification triage. So I get very specific things set to my wrist. And what it's helped me do is sort of when I come home from work, I can just like put my phone away, put my computer away, not worry about stuff. but I have like Slack messages, private Slack messages will come through to my wrist. So if someone needs to get a hold of me for something, I can know that like go open your computer, go respond to it or whatever. The same thing with email. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't even use like the fitness features, but that's just because I'm not
You're a slug.
into fitness.
In kind words.
And I'm a giant potato.
Everybody who's not Igor is a slug. Don't
Pretty
worry
much.
about it.
I'm a slug as well. What I wanted to ask you though, Jess, was Rose gave you her Apple Watch.
Yes, she did.
So have you started using that? And
Well, as you can plainly see, well,
you try to throw them a softball. Just kidding.
okay, so Rose gave me her Apple Watch not
Yeah.
very long ago.
Originally Ian Hardy's.
Originally
Yeah.
Ian Hardy's Apple Watch, so it's
Originally
made its
Douglas's or
rounds.
something. I don't know.
And while I've tried
I think it
out
was.
so many different kinds of devices, and I've worn lots of fitness trackers, smartwatches, and reviewed them, I've never actually owned a smartwatch before this one. This is my first time trying to integrate it into my life for longer than a 2-week period of time. And you saw me wearing it for the first 2 days, really excited. Like I could do all these great things. I can get my messages, and I was charging it at the desk, saying I had a web of charging cords with me. But as you can see, I'm not wearing it anymore. And I think that the biggest issue that I found with the smartwatch is that I would go to the bathroom and leave my phone behind, and then I'd be checking my wrist at the sink, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, I can't, like, it's disconnected, I can't use it anymore. And that's probably the biggest thing for me. But
See, that's what I'm
also
saying.
I'm also not somebody that wore a watch every single day. Like I was very comfortable, like as soon as I sit down, I take my phone out, I put it on the table, and that's my watch.
Yep.
And every notification that I need is right there. So and since I have mostly a sitting job, as you all know, because you all sit around me at fairly close distances.
It's constantly pestering you to get up.
Yeah, Jess, get up and walk around or something.
Yeah.
Like, stop lying down on the floor.
And
She just lies on the floor most
All
days.
day.
Yeah.
That is strange. I think she's clinically depressed.
well,
But,
who wouldn't be in this state of the world, right?
It's true. I mean,
The
and for
weather.
me, I found that I was just getting 2 sets of the same notifications on my wrist, and then it would show up on my phone within seconds, or often vice versa. And that didn't seem very useful to me. So it's sitting at home right now on my dresser in front of my mirror, totally dead, not charged. So that's how my experience with my Apple Watch went.
See, I completely understand. And I think, like, it's like Pat said, if he has set it up so there's not so much
But
duplication.
it took a while, right?
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
first got it, like, I think it probably was the first smartwatch that I'd ever used. And I didn't really understand how how it fit into my workflow and how I live my life. And I had it replicating every single thing that showed up on my phone. And that just didn't make sense, but it took me a while to clue into that. And then I think I slowly culled what type of notifications were coming through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at one point I was getting like tweets through it. I still get phone calls through it, but there's like a ton of stuff. And to me, it just didn't make sense. And it was just replicating what my phone already does. And I think that's why I can see some use cases for a smartwatch that runs on LTE. But then again, I'm also like, if I still had my phone on me, I don't want my wrist replicating what my phone is already doing.
So I guess like my idea, and who knows whether it still sort of lacks a lot of value, but my idea is that you would use your watch when you can't use your
I think
phone. So
that's
you're
fair,
not
yeah.
using it
Yeah.
at the same time. And I guess that would also require that it would be kind of rugged if you were going and doing sporty things or whatever.
So you want the
need
LG
waterproof.
Sport is what you're saying.
Yes, I want the LG
Or
Sport.
Hint,
Or some
hint.
Garmin one.
Send us one, please.
It's going to be so interesting, though, I do think, to see on February 9th where the future of wearables is going, because this is really going to dictate a lot of what's going to happen in the future.
It's true. I think that people have had, I mean, obviously we've adopted smartphones at an unprecedented rate for any other form of portable device, but I think people have generally had a bit of a harder time getting used to wearables simply because they're so connected. And I actually absolutely agree with you. I should say that first, but because they're so connected to your phone that they don't add enough value for people to use them every single day, which is part of the reason why the fitness tracker has become the most prominent kind of wearable on the market because it really does add something extra
So
to
true.
your everyday. And while the Apple Watch and I believe the Zen Watch 3 also has capabilities like that, it's not the central action of the
No,
device.
yeah.
Right, and I also think it's important to keep in mind like where are wearables in their kind of life cycle compared to mobile phones, right?
Mhm.
Like
Absolutely, yeah.
when the Motorola launched the first mobile phone, it was not selling like hotcakes, right? It
Yeah.
took a while for this technology to get kind of to a critical point where it made sense for the average consumer, and a company like Apple took and kind of made it again make sense to consumers. I wouldn't be surprised if this, like something like Google Glass, we see Google abandon it and come back to it 5-10 years down the road where the technology makes it, you know, like, because the end point of these wearables, quote unquote, is not something you wear on your wrist. It's something you implant in your brain or somewhere else in your
Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
right? They're much more Black
In the
Mirror
future.
That just makes me
type-esque.
really uncomfortable. Too.
Yeah, but like
I'm
that-
ready now.
Rose, implant me.
My
Uh,
body is
it's a
ready.
contact lens that you put on.
Yeah.
It's ready to have a wearable baby.
On that note, it's probably best that we
Shut
Gives
down
a
the
shout out.
podcast immediately.